Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Syngenta Canada, Alberta Wheat Commission, and C&M Seeds.
By Sean Thompson of the University of Saskatchewan. Sean, you work at the Feed Research Centre, and there's been some work going on lately in Western Canada looking at technology for sorting out Fusarium, specifically Fusarium damaged kernels out of grain. Maybe tell us about some of the research that's been done in terms of evaluating what technology is out there and whether it works.
Yeah, so the incidence of Fusarium in Western Canada has just been huge over the last few years, and that's kind of brought around the need to figure out how can we effectively remove these kernels from grain. We've looked at a few different options, color sorter being one, but it really doesn't address those kernels that don't show any physical differences or size differences. So what we've come up with and what we purchased several years ago was a bow mill tri-Q seed sorter, which uses near-infrared transmittance technology. And what that means that it actually scans chemical composition and as well of each individual kernel. And this is something pretty revolutionary as far as seed sorters go, and gives you a better idea of the overall composition of the grain you are dealing with.
So what have you found in terms of whether this works in Canada?
Well, I guess the first issue to get over with is whether this was applicable to Canadian grains, because there are differences in European versus Canadian grains. Through some preliminary studies, we did see it was effective in removing the Fusarium damaged kernels, as well as reducing the total DON levels in the grain.
You measured that in various ways. One was visual, to getting actual grain commission inspectors to look at it?
Yeah, so we did a few different studies. A lot of them looked at different parameters such as crude protein, DON level, Fusarium damaged kernel, as well as we put values to that in terms of grading, economic values, and showed some pretty significant benefits from removing Fusarium.
Good. Economic benefits, obviously.
Yeah, big time, and up to $240 per ton benefit from removing anywhere from 5 to 20% of the grain which would have been infected. And that's pretty huge coming from initial grain, which essentially should be buried in the field with zero value.
One of the studies that you did, or actually a couple studies looking at taking this right to feeding it to poultry, to broilers. What did you find when you fed it to chicken?
So I guess this has given us a unique opportunity to be able to evaluate DON in animal diets. Previously, you would have to mix different grain sources together and infect it with a clean one to get different ratios. This allows us to use a single source of wheat to be able to create 4 or 5 different diets with varying mycotoxin levels. And what we were able to deduce was that the effects of DON might not be from the toxicity itself, but just from the feed refusal of Fusarium infected feed, just being less palatable and therefore them eating less.
You mainly been looking at DON and Fusarium. What about other mycotoxins?
Yeah, so that was kind of the preliminary key ones that we started with, and it just kind of worked out with the incidence of Fusarium. Now we've got some studies looking at, because the machine does sort on crude protein, as well as other parameters, we're just looking at processing differences between kernels of different protein from the same source. A kernel in a single head of wheat, different kernels can vary up to 6% in crude protein. And that's pretty huge when you think about it. Being able to separate the kernels based on protein in a single source of wheat gives us a lot of opportunity to look at processing differences, for example.
All right. So do you think bow mills will become technology that we see readily adopted?
I think there's going to be a lot of copycats in the future, just seeing how it can be done. This concept has been looked at lots, and the trouble has just been how you can sort based on individual kernels. It's a pretty heavy price tag for the average farmer, but grain terminals, for example, they're using pasta plants in series over in Italy for durum grain. I could see it becoming a part of grain terminals in Canada. I know there's a feed company in Winnipeg that has recently purchased 2. So I do see it becoming something in the future.
All right. Thanks for your time, Sean.
Thanks.